There we go. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim Howell at Chief Advocacy Officer at BCA to give us the ins and outs of where we finished this year, and with a lot of people's last session
True.
uh, here in Montgomery. So
A few
sure.
at least. Yeah.
Yeah, and the last session in the existing state house. So lots of lasts yesterday, but and then probably give us a little bit of what's coming in the next couple of months. And so Tim, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Paige. And I do want to say the first thing before we dive into a little bit of State House stuff, I want to thank you personally for everything that you've done to help us and the effort this session. And this is kind of our between you and me at least our first session working together. And
Yeah.
you've been a great help and a great advocate for your members and your folks. And I just look forward to doing this again next year, obviously. But can't thank you enough. So
Yeah. Well,
you,
I
you
appreciate that, Tim.
no, you were there whenever we needed you, and you were a big help. So thank you. Um, and I'll add this. It just kind of start out by just a little bit of inside stuff from yesterday. It's Paige. You on one hand, you are right that I think maybe there was some thought in the afternoon that the day was going to go very late and that they were going to slug it out and grind through their respective calendars well into the evening. But to be honest with you, they probably did better than they do on most last days because I tell the story of 2 years ago when I was Greg Reed's chief of staff, when Greg Reed was pro tem of the Alabama Senate, and I was his chief of staff. And I think we gavelled in at 9 that morning on the last day. And and if I have my timeline correct, I think we gavelled out around 4 o'clock, and we never even got to the point where we adopted a calendar. So the last days can be just, or they are not, they can be, but they are crazy and chaotic, and you often have all of these axes that people want to grind on various things that all come bubble to the surface on the last day. And so when you have people, I will say that when you have, whether it's us or anybody, any advocates out there, that when you have a bill or a piece of legislation that is waiting on the last day, that the likelihood at that point of it passing is just so slim because, like I said, all of the grievances get aired on the last day. And so it's crazy. And yesterday, actually, as far as last days go, was actually somewhat smooth. They did pass a few bills and got a few things done at the last minute, and so it wasn't didn't go seamlessly. It obviously was a little bit weird towards the end, but it was fine. It was a good last day, fairly productive as far as last days go. Um, just a few things, kind of notables, if you will. My first thing I'll talk about is just a few notables. Some of the things we've talked about before, just in terms of what passed this year. Really, the only two, I would say, the two most significant workforce bills that we had was the speaker had two career and technical education bills. One of them provides a tax credit to employers who loan out their employees to teach CTE classes in public schools. So that's something that's going to be available to try and grow just sort of that wealth of knowledge in the CTE classes. And then there was his other bill that he was really advocating for was a bill to kind of cut red tape on the certification process for CTE teachers. So he's hoping that those two things working in tandem will help just our overall workforce development effort. Uh, James Lomax in the House sponsored a bill that passed yesterday. Finally, that provides a $1,000 tax deduction on state taxes for overtime earned. It's again, you can deduct up to $1,000 in overtime from your taxes. Another bill that y'all probably heard a lot about was that our Public Service Commission this past a couple weeks ago, finally, after a lot of going back and forth throughout the session. But our Public Service Commission will soon be a 7-member commission, go from 3 to 7 members. The 3 existing members are grandfathered in, and then there'll be 4 more who get appointed by the governor. And then when the new governor is sworn in next year, that governor will appoint an energy secretary that will sort of oversee our energy policy and the Public Service Commission. So that'll be new. We had earlier this week, we had concurrences on the budgets, state budgets. There's ended up being a $3.75 billion general fund budget that passed and a $12.4 billion education budget. Fairly, as far as budgets go, fairly standard, which you would expect in the last year of a quadrennium. No one going out too far on a limb, just trying to make sure that we pass good, sound budgets this year. We did get to finally this week, they brought across the finish line 2 bills dealing with data centers. I know that's kind of a big deal statewide, and some of y'all have dealt and will deal with these in the future. But there's 2 bills dealing with data centers. One of them is what I would call the pay your own freight bill. If you're a large data center and you come in and you require infrastructure upgrades and other things that would otherwise increase the cost of delivering power to those data centers, that they are going to be responsible for those upgrades and whatnot, just to ensure that those increased costs don't get passed along to the larger collection of ratepayers and consumers. And then there's the second bill, which y'all may end up hearing a little bit about too, is that there's a bill which could allow some local governments, the state and local governments, to reduce some of the tax abatements that these data centers have enjoyed. And right now they can offer up to 30 years, and it's gone down to 20. Although there is a provision that got put in the bill during the process, which will basically allow the state and the local governing body to enter into a contract with the data centers if they want to extend those tax abatements up to 30 years. So if everybody's in agreement, they can keep that as an option. There's a couple things that failed that were notable. One of which is kind of tied to those data centers. Is there was a bill to prohibit solar farms, or put a moratorium on the building of solar farms for 1 year, and this was a kind of born out of some local politics down in Baldwin County. They are constructing a solar farm in Baldwin County that maybe there was some, as can happen, some public relations misperceptions and these kinds of things that happen. But the interesting thing about that solar farm that they were trying to, that some of the local people were trying to prohibit, is that it is tied to the data center that Meta is building here in Montgomery. And so, there's, like we always say with a lot of this legislation, is that it can have a cascading effect on other things. And so a local issue in Baldwin County was really ended up having some statewide import. Now that bill did fail, but it's notable that, it's just a reminder, and we'll get to this in a second, but it's just a reminder of, good and bad of how local voices can have an impact on what we're doing around here. And then lastly, another bill that failed was yesterday, just died on the vine on the Senate calendar, was the closed primary bill, where you were going to have to register as a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, and then be restricted to those respective primaries. So that died. You may see it again. I have no idea. But again, those are kind of some notable things. that that we were tracking and we were participating in. But the second thing I want to mention though is just kind of this session. It ended a little weird, but it was weird altogether. Being the fourth year of a quadrennium, you tend to have those big issues that are the big ticket items that have real statewide resonance. Those tend to, by the time you get to the fourth year of a quadrennium, those have kind of been done. And so what you see here is, kind of a joint theme, I would say, of this session as we look back on it is, number one, it was a session where there were just a lot of pet projects that legislators were trying to carry across the finish line, that maybe didn't have that large statewide import, just issues that they had been maybe working on either for locally or something that maybe they had been working on for 2 or 3 years and we're trying to get across the finish line. And the second thing I would say, and I will say, among those, just a few other things that did pass. There was a data privacy bill that Representative Mike Shaw from Hoover had been working on for several years. And he had really gotten some input from us and other stakeholders out there, and he was able to pull that across the finish line finally. It's it's a issue a lot of states have tackled, and we just hadn't really done it in a comprehensive way. And it was, again, we had some input into it, and we're grateful to him and him allowing us to do so. There was an ambulance bill, a ground ambulance bill, which set some reimbursement rates. And it was a bill that, I know they've probably been working on it maybe almost 4 years, 4 years, two, I know at least 3. And they finally pulled that across the finish line. It was really meant to address just trying to help rural ambulance access is really at its core, I think, what they were doing. Again, another bill that is not the shiniest object, but something that really consumed a lot of time for legislators this session. And then finally, I will mention they also did some updates to some of the school choice provisions in the code, and just trying to do some tweaks and polishing there. But again, those are the types of things that legislators have been working on for 2 or 3 years, and we're just using this session to do. And that's why those are also the kind of things where you don't hear a lot about them, but they did consume a lot of time and energy. The other theme I would mention, and this really goes to, why we're on the Zoom here, is just there was a lot that happened that showed external factors have a lot to do with what goes on in that building, both good and bad. And candidly, I think we saw some of the bad this year in terms of groups maybe working on bills that are antithetical to, what we in the business community and all y'all who represent your local chambers and your local business communities would view as good legislation. But it's just a reminder that the other side works also, and we need to continue. And honestly and truly, you just can never let up. You can never let your foot off the gas in terms of as local leaders and local stakeholders, making sure that you stay engaged with your legislators on the things that you care about and the things that affect your members. It's a process that just never stops, because when you do, someone is going to fill that vacuum. It's a reminder. Someone's going to fill that vacuum. And if we collectively, all of us on this Zoom, don't do it, I would dare say we're not going to like the people who do. And so we're not going to like their ideas, at least, is what I should say. So external factors and those conversations that we have, starting right now for next session, they matter. It's just something we can't lose sight of. And then finally, the third thing I'll mention today is, just as Paige mentioned, where does this leave us going forward? From BCA's perspective, even last week, we started having conversations internally here with Helena and the governmental affairs team. Okay, what's next? Like, what do we want to focus on next year? And, we've kind of already started that process of ways that we can identify the things to represent y'all in your communities and our members and all those members that we share, and the things that are good for the collective business community as well as all of our business communities across the state. How are we going to go about finding these things and making them priorities that we can stand for next session? So even before this session was over, we already started that here in this office. And then secondly, I will just mention finally, in fact, obviously we're going to have a new governor, and everyone in the state house is looking at what is kind of the presumptive nominee and winner, obviously Coach Tuberville, and kind of looking and trying to understand what is it that he's going to care about. And that's not just us, but those are actual legislators, other elected officials, trying to figure that out as quickly as possible. I do think that sort of the easy things, and we may have even talked about this on one of these calls, but I think the easy things that I know that he's going to care about are, number one, some education reform. And what that looks like, I don't know, but I do know that that's something that he cares deeply about, is trying to continue to shape and reform the state's education system. And then secondly is just trying to cut red tape in state government and trying to cut waste in state government, trying to identify those things. Again, what that looks like, I don't know, but I do think that will be a priority of his. Both of those topics will involve legislation. Some of the trying to create more efficient government he can do without obviously being in charge of those agencies, but in some ways it will require legislation depending on what he wants to do. And I also think I'll add this is, trying to understand how we can continue to grow rural Alabama. I think is probably also going to be a priority, and you'll see that as a priority too with the speaker and the pro tem with Ledbetter and Gudger. That's something that I think they're going to probably maybe dial in on even a little bit more than they have. I know Gudger is continuing to develop his rural roadmap. It's probably going to be something that we see even further developed. They did pass a piece of legislation that was just sort of a clarifying piece of legislation to help define, what constitutes rural areas, what are the places where they want to focus most. But it was really just sort of a preliminary type foundational piece of legislation. I think he's going to spend a good part of this offseason trying to explore more where he needs to focus. And I think that will be a joint effort between he and Ledbetter and Tuberville. So I would say looking forward, those are probably the three areas where I feel most confident that the new governor and the new quadrennium legislators in the new quadrennium will focus. And as Paige said, it'll be interesting next session. I mean, they're going to be so giddy to be in a new state house that who knows when they'll actually get to work, if they're running around decorating their offices. So, and someone asked me, and then I'll open up to questions, but someone asked me the other day, and I think Caroline and I were walking back to the office on a break from the State House, and asked if we had gotten photos taken in the old State House to kind of remind us. And Caroline and I had both spent time working inside the State House for the Senate, and both of us just kind of just shook our heads and be like, "No, we're good. That old building needs to come down." So I don't think anyone will miss it. Anyway, Paige, if you got any questions, or if anybody on the call has got questions, I mean, I'm wide open here.
Tim, I have lots going through my head, but just to go back to the PSC, because
Sure.
I know that was a little all over.
It
Um,
was. It took the entire session to try and find the
yes.
consensus. I mean, it took weeks.
So, and just for clarification, what I heard you say, it's going to go to a seven-member board,
Correct.
or so there's three up for election right now,
Mhm.
three
And they will
seats,
be grandfathered in.
and they will be grandfathered in. The additional four will be appointed by Governor Ivy before
Correct.
he leaves office.
That's right, and
Okay,
that's right, and their terms will be staggered, and I don't remember the exact dates, but they'll somehow stagger the
right.
terms of all seven so that they stand at different times.
And will
Uh,
those will, once they're appointed, then they will go into an election cycle. Is that
Correct. That's right. That's right.
okay? So the appointment is just the initial four,
It is. It
and
is.
then Secretary of Energy will be appointed by the next governor.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
just
That's it. We, again, there's some details on dates in terms
yeah,
of staggering, and those initial appointed their terms. There's some of them that are like 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, and to try and create that stagger.
yeah,
Um, and the interesting note about that too that I did leave out um, is that they ultimately will be elected by congressional district,
yes.
and so you will have seven from one from each congressional district is the goal.
Okay.
So that's an interesting kind of
And we had a
view to it.
question in the chat that I tried to answer. The bill numbers for the data center. Was it HB 399 and Senate Bill 270?
Which they ultimately passed. Yeah, let me pull that up here real quick.
Okay.
That may be right.
I think those were the
By
right
the
numbers.
end, what happens is the bill numbers all just run together after by the end. I think that's right. Let's see here. So SB 270 is
Yep.
that's right. That is the pay your own freight
Mhm.
bill, if you will. And then HB 399, Les Lee Halsey's bill, that was the abatement bill.
Okay. Good. I had that right.
Yep, you did.
And then do you have the number, and you can text it to me later, on that definition of rural? Because I know that was one of the things that Pro
I
Tem
do.
Gudger was, there were so many
Um,
different definitions of what defined rural Alabama. Does this
yeah, let me find
clarify
that for you.
that?
I will. Let me find
Okay,
that for you,
that's
and I
fine.
will
You can
send
send
it to
it.
you. Yeah. Um, Hold on one second. Let me just, if I can do a quick scroll. This is, as they say, this makes for bad radio, but um, if I got it here handy. Um, all right. So the initiative was extended by a Senate joint resolution by Gudger, but that's not what we're looking for. Um, because they pass those resolutions and they do like he had that rural roadmap commission gets created
Mhm.
by a resolution, and most of the time it's like 12 months or 6 months or something. So he wanted to carry it into another year, so he passed another resolution. I don't see that page.
It's
I'll
okay.
send it to you.
We'll
I'll
find
send
it.
it to you.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions, concerns for Tim? Everybody's like, it's Friday.
I
Yeah, I
have
know, and,
one.
that's
Crystal.
fine.
I
Um,
do. Tim, thank you so much.
yes, ma'am.
Appreciate the update. We had Representative Collins, of course, retiring. I was just curious, do you know roughly how many legislators we had that are
That are not
retiring,
coming
not
back.
coming back?
I should have that number, and I'm embarrassed. So
That's okay if you
in the
don't. I just,
Senate, I will say this: in the Senate, there's two.
mhm,
There's Jack Williams from Mobile he is running for agriculture commissioner, and so he is not standing for reelection. And then Tom Butler is retiring
right.
from Madison.
Hmm.
He's from up your
Yeah.
way,
Yeah, we know
and
him
so
well.
yeah, no, that's right, sweet man.
Mhm.
Um, and then in the House, gosh, I know you've got obviously you got Terry Collins, um, Bob Fincher from East Alabama is not coming back. Let's see who else. I mean, I think there's
Who's the young man running for lieutenant governor?
Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
um let's see here.
Oh,
So so Wes Allen's already he was in
mm,
the House and then now he's at the Secretary of State's office.
no,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is
Somebody,
from my,
Estes, is it coming back in the chat?
oh yeah, Estes.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
that's right. Estes. Um, gosh, I'm looking at the map on my wall, and I should know offhand what that number is, but
You're
uh,
good. I was just curious if it was like a mass exodus or
no, there's really not. There's really not a mass exodus. I hate y'all are
They all
losing
want to go to the
Terry.
new state house.
Yeah,
we,
well,
yeah.
well, that's not a small thing. Um, that again, I hate y'all are losing Terry, but there's, I mean, y'all know, I mean, y'all know her situation, and she's been serving since 2010. And I tell the funny story. I'm gonna tell my Terry Collins story real quick. Um, so this was in 2009. I think it was in 2009, and I was at the time helping some folks with some candidate recruitment, and they're like, "Yeah, that seat up in Decatur." We I can't remember if y'all had somebody that just wasn't running again. I can't exactly remember what the circumstance was. And they were like, you should go up there and talk to some people in the business community and try and find. And so I did, a candidate. And so they gave me the names of like 4 or 5 people that I should go talk to ask them if they knew anybody. Well, the first person on the list to go talk to was Terry Collins when she worked at the bank. And so I was coming in there under the guise of, and truly at the time I thought, like, I'm asking her, do you know anyone who would be good to run? And I walked in there. It was the first meeting I had in Decatur. I walked in there, went to the bank, sat down at her desk, and started talking to her for 10 minutes. And she's like kind of thinking, well, so and so might be good if they do it, whatever. After 10 minutes, I said, why don't you just run? And she was like, wait, me? What do you mean? I said, you should run. You'd be great. And she goes, well, I never thought of it. And I said, hold that thought. I said, you need to go home. And at the time her husband was still alive. And I said, you need to go home and talk to Tom and y'all think about this. And she called me back like a week later. She goes, Tim, I think I'm interested. And away she went. She made history. So that was 20. She was elected in 2010. So she served 16 years and she did great.
Yeah. Philip Insler was the one I was thinking
Oh
of.
yeah. Philip
On the,
Phillips. Yeah, no. He's
oh,
not running again. And there's a couple candidates. That's here in Montgomery. I
yeah,
may very well be sitting in his district. In fact, I don't
I
know.
think we probably are.
Yeah. That's right. Philip Ensler's not running, so it's not but a handful in the House and 2 in the Senate. There's not going to be. The good news is, well, depending on who you are, right? I mean, I guess in terms of experience and those types of things, if you value that, then there's not going to be any sort of drain of experience. I'll put it that way.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. May 19th is the next date on the calendar. Primaries.
That's right. Primary day, and then I think June 23rd is a runoff day. It's a runoff election day, and boy, that's going to be if I was in a runoff and it's June 23rd. That's a tough day to you have to just tell all you folks to get out and vote because not many people are going to remember.
Yeah, not in the middle of the summer.
No, not in the summer, and it's just kind of a random, Tuesday in June.
Yeah. So for all of our local chambers, hang on between now and May 19th, you're going to be seeing a lot of candidates out and
Yeah,
about at all of your events. We know at the local level what that political season looks like. So just hang tight and thank you, Tim. I was remiss in not saying thank you to the team downstairs. You guys have been great this year and keeping us informed. We always enjoy um, capital updates, during the session and you guys keeping us abreast of what's happening over there. This was an interesting session that I don't think a lot of us thought would be quite as interesting, but it turned out to be. And it's really quick into um, January of next year? Do we come back in January next year?
What? No,
Or is it February?
February. It's
February.
February. It's
That's
that.
right,
I think
February.
it's February 2nd.
Yeah,
I
first
think is
Tuesday.
that first Tuesday. So they
Yeah.
changed the law last year before last, maybe, so that all the first 3 years of the quadrennium you come in that first Tuesday in February, and then the fourth year, just like this year, you come in the second Tuesday in January. So they changed the law so that it's
Okay. So
um,
so the
because
new
if you remember, they used to only come in the first year. They used to come in March,
right.
which theoretically allowed the new governor time to propose a budget and do some things and get squared away, just a little more time. And for whatever reason, I think they just thought maybe February was a little bit better middle ground there.
Okay. So lots of happening. I know many of you will be working on your public policy agenda later in the summer into the early fall. Certainly, I think lean into the BCA team, stay in communication with them on what's to come as we learn more. Um, Thank you, Tim. Thank you to all of the team. Thank you to you guys that have been with us throughout session and go have a great weekend.
Well, we're glad to
Oh,
help, Paige, and thank
yeah.
y'all. And please, as Paige mentioned, don't hesitate to call us or contact us if we can ever help.
Yep. Crystal, did you have?
One last question, Paige or Tim, either of you all. Is there any better feel for when they're going to set their spring break? It's really hard when you're trying to set your Montgomery trip, your annual Montgomery trip, as you know. And sometimes they don't come up with that date early
So
enough, and it's just kind of a stab in the dark.
I totally agree and understand. And when I used to work in the Senate, that's probably the single most popular question that members of the legislature would ask me during the off season: when is spring break?
Mhm.
And so, what they normally do is research when the most common or the whatever is there a consensus spring break amongst all the public school systems in the state,
Gotcha.
and it tends to be that sort of last full week in March. It just, for whatever reason, that's when it tends to fall. So I don't know what that is this year, but or in 27, but um, it's that's not definitive by any means.
Yeah.
But that's when it most often tends to be, and they probably will probably set it normally like kind of next fall, September, October kind of time frame is normally when they'll make the announcement to their legislative members. So if that's something you want us to just keep an eye on, we're glad to.
That
It
would be helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and Paige, if you just want to make a note when I hear it and they said it, I'll just pass it on to you, and you can pass it
that
along
would
to
be
your folks.
great because we
Yeah,
have a good number of our chambers that schedule a year out
yeah.
Yeah.
their calendar. Any thought on, I know a couple of years now they've taken two.
Hmm.
I don't think they're gonna. I, they've done that a couple times. They didn't do it this year.
Right.
I, I'd be surprised if they go back to two. I think that people like the feel of this year, just kind of kind of getting through it as quickly as possible. I think there were a couple years where it was super contentious, and I do think that people liked a little extra rest when things were going really crazy and they had a lot of late nights and all that stuff. But by and large, I'd be surprised if they went back to that model.
I will make a note for like
Just
middle.
like around Labor Day, they probably won't decide before Labor Day. Around then, just like ping me,
Okay,
Paige, and I'll
I've got
start
it.
asking.
I've got it on my calendar.
Okay.
Thank you both.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, y'all have a wonderful weekend and Tim, get some rest
Will do.
and we will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Bye.